episode of Betty Adams Discusses. I am here with...
It's me, Grim.
Kind of not to exactly change the subject, but I do got something I want to talk to you. A theory I want to throw at you.
Okay.
So,
you know I love your theories.
You remember my theory last time about Hikari Shinomiya?
About if she's not dead?
Yeah, so you have the concept that we all kind of pretty much agree. Number 6 probably didn't kill her directly. It was probably her suit killed her.
That's still more or less what I believe, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was probably overexertion. The most likely situation at this point is that she essentially worked herself to death in classic Japanese tradition.
Yeah.
So, and then I kind of put out there that, well, what about the possibility that she's not dead yet? But this was based on, like, I think I counted out 5 different assumptions that had no evidence for them yet. But the biggest and weakest one by far was that I had to assume at that point that the suit itself corrupted her, Claymore style. And I actually got that idea from listening to you and Anime Ramble discuss the situation.
That's right, yeah, because we had this discussion as well after, didn't we?
But we had we know that the suit's damage and can ultimately be fatal for the officers, but we'd had no evidence at all that the suit could corrupt or alter the behavior of the officers. The only thing that might have been evidence was that there were significant safeties that we saw the Director General go to activate number 2. But that wasn't necessarily, that could be just safeties to keep it from crisping his brain. With chapter 48 and 49, that hole in the theory, I think, has been filled up because clearly number 9's goal is to take over General Director Shinomiya in some form because he needs the compatible user for the suit.
Yeah.
So the whole point of those cordyceps, we've seen him take over the ant kaiju, and the whole biological concept of these cordyceps types fungus is that they can take over and alter the behavior of other organisms to serve their own ends.
Yeah.
So here we have a direct connection that fills up the largest plot hole in that theory, that Hikari Shinomiya might still be alive and somewhere in the background, which was also kind of fed into my theory that Kafka's degeneration ability, which was also strongly supported, I think in chapter 48, the story made a point of it again that Kaiju number 9 can't regenerate when directly confronted with Kaiju number 8. So that my concept was that Kafka, as Kaiju number 8, might be responsible for rescuing Hikari Shinomiya from being trapped in a kaiju form, basically, by deactivating the kaiju. So I don't know if you'd call it a second theory or an alteration to the theory.
Okay.
But one of the biggest questions, we can both agree, one of the biggest questions of the theory is why Kafka?
Oh, yeah. Where
did the little guy come from? Who sent him? What's his goal? Why did he choose Kafka? Because the little guy definitely said, I found you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's going to be the question for a long time, I reckon.
Now, Hikari Shinomiya, from the few glimpses we've gotten of her, she was a classic manga protagonist, even more so than Kafka.
For sure, yes.
She was young, she was never say die, and the main relationship strain that we've seen between her and her family was that she protects everybody. She wants to protect everybody. Her motivation was to protect the people around her, even more than Kafka's is. Kafka is just a stand-by Mina. Yeah. And he just has all these secondary manga protagonist characteristics of protecting people and taking care of people. And we've never once questioned that because he is a shonen protagonist. But when we first see Kafka, he's not even taking care of himself properly. And
he's basically given up at that point.
Yeah. And so we really have no evidence that Kafka, unaided, behaves this way that we've seen him since the transformation, which happened very early in the story. We did see him take care of Reno, and so there's an element of that in his personality that is completely separate from the little guy. But 90%, 90% and growing of the behavior that we've seen in Kafka has been influenced by the fact that the little guy is inside of him. So we don't know how much of Kafka, the Kafka that we've seen, is actually Kafka.
Yeah.
And so, again, where did the little guy come from? Now, I'm going to have to go about this in a roundabout way. Okay. Kaiju number 9 has almost, from my perspective, shoot me down here if you can. Kaiju number 9 has been around a lot longer than we as the audience think of him as being around. We see him show up at the Tachikawa base application arc, but he's clearly been around a lot longer than that. He altered the giant fungal kaiju, which happened quite a long time before they actually fought it, from the discussion they had. And had Kaiju number 8 not been there to stop him, no one would have known he was involved in the Tachikawa base incident.
That's true.
There had been no reports of him up till that point, and Kikoru's description of him seemed to be the only thing that they had to go on. And had Kafka not been there to rescue Rino and Aiharu, and had Kikoru not been there, and she wouldn't have been there if Kafka hadn't rescued her in the first place, no one would have known he was involved with the giant fungus. So, and we know that he's been studying things, and that he has a base of operations to go back to.
Yeah.
And that Kaiju number 9 and his bodies have standing orders to, if they fail in their mission, if it's defeated, bring officers back for study. So we don't know how long Kaiju number 9's been around, but it's probably been a while. And we were talking about how powerful Kaiju number 9 had gotten all of a sudden, the sudden exponential leap in growth, which is mirrored by the sudden general exponential leap in growth of Kaiju overall, and the sudden exponential growth in the frequency of Kaiju attacks, et cetera, and so on.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a stretch to think that Kaiju number 9's been around for a significant period of time.
Yeah, I could see that.
And Kaiju number 9 is very, very confident that he can take over a Kaiju numbered weapon as long as there's a compatible human alive there and ready. Because Kaiju number 9, in that tent, it's clearly egging Director General Shinomiya on. It wants Director Shinomiya to put the weapon 2 on and activate it. And I was discussing this with Pyro Hunter Anime, and I was talking about, I phrased it as the Director General was playing into number 9's plans, and Pyro Hunter Anime goes, nah, he sees what's going on. He's just stepping into the storm like a boss.
Yeah.
But clearly Kaiju number 9 is absolutely confident that he can do this. And given what a scientist Kaiju number 9 is, I assume that means he's done it before.
Yeah, okay.
So here's my kind of first concept. If Hikari Shinomiya didn't just straight up die when Kikoru believes she did, it was probably because Kaiju number 9 in a much weaker force, because if you go backwards along an exponential growth curve, it gets weaker. So I think that Kaiju number 6 was probably a modification by Kaiju number 9. And Kaiju number 9 was there watching, learning. And it's possible, because we know that Kaiju number 9 is confident he can do this, it's possible that Kaiju number 9 saw Hikari Shinomiya taking out number 6 and decided to corrupt her. And she might have even been the 0 patient. So Kaiju number 9, who can take over other Kaiju, it decides, well, maybe I can take over this human and that great Kaiju power in the number 4 weapon. Okay. That way you don't have to depend on a completely unhinted at claymorification by the Kaiju weapons. So this is something Kaiju number 9 believes he can do. Possibly he did it before. Maybe Kaiju number 9 was the one who took over Hikari Shinomiya. And that would explain, if she went rogue, if she had to be taken down, that would explain how it happened.
Okay. So you're saying kind of like it could just be that there is a truth that that some people know and the rest of us don't. For example,
yes, like, so
Kikoru
maybe
doesn't know the real truth.
Yeah, because again, Kikoru was just a child at that time. They wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't have told a child. No,
and
no way.
If their golden child went rogue and turned into a kaiju and started attacking people, or just seemed to go crazy and started attacking her teammates, they're not going to tell anyone about that.
Oh, of course. Yeah, you're right.
Especially if they don't know why or how it happened. And then, of course, we discussed, like, maybe Aiso Shinomiya had to take her down, or maybe she just escaped and ran off somewhere, but where would she be after all this time?
Yeah,
but that's when
maybe.
we come back to number 9's known tendency to grab samples from living authors, from living officers.
Mhm.
So there's so many different ways it could have gone down, but what I'm kind of thinking is Kaiju number 9 instigates the Kaiju number 6 incident, a series of cataclysms. Kikoru Shinomiya is out there sweeping through the battlefield like a Valkyrie, fixing everything. She is a thorn, a bump in Kaiju number 9's plans, and we've seen how he reacts to that. Kaiju number 9, either for the first time or possibly not the first time, we can't know, decides to try to take over the power of the Kaiju number 4 weapon through the compatible user, and succeeds more or less to some degree. Now, then you have number 4 under Hikari Shinomiya going rogue. Perhaps Aiso needs to take her down, explaining his trauma. Perhaps it doesn't work. Perhaps her body just shuts down. Because assuming that this was one of Kaiju number 9's experiments, there's no reason to expect that it actually worked. But anyway, so Kaiju, I've always kind of wondered, well, either Hikaru Shinomiya's body is in cold storage in the Defense Force somewhere.
Oh yeah, I remember you saying that to me once before.
She's out there somewhere running around as a Kaiju, which doesn't make sense because a Kaiju of that, presumably of that power, is going to attract a lot of attention, and the Defense Force is pretty good at hunting them down. But if she was taken down, it's possible that Kaiju number 9 took her body, or Kaiju number 9 had enough control over her to capture her and take her back to wherever he was planning on taking Reno back to.
Yeah, maybe.
So that would explain, if the Defense Force doesn't have her, why they don't have her body. Because remember, we never saw the body.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so that is just kind of one subset of this little theory I'm working on.
Okay,
Kaiju number 9's stated ability to corrupt and take over numbered weapons through a compatible human host explains how that might have happened to Hikari Shinomiya.
Right, yes.
Now, Kaiju number 9's stated tendency to grab officers under interesting conditions for study and take them back might have explained where little guy in Kaiju number 8 came from. So let's talk about artistic mirroring here. The main major interaction we see between Kafka and Kokoru with Kaiju number 8, the Kaiju number 8 body out and in control. He grabs her, he transitions down, and he smiles at her and says, "Good job." Now, then you have a very, very similarly artistic scene in the flashback scene where Hikari had just come back from battle. And the really cute scene with Hikari and Aiso and Kikoru and the butler all in the house.
Yes, yeah, I know the one.
It's a very similar scene where her mom pats her on the head and says, "I'll protect you."
Yeah.
So there is mirroring. So what if the little guy, presuming that Hikari Shinomiya was corrupted in combat with Kaiju number 9 during the Kaiju number 6 incident, presuming Kaiju number 9 took her away to his lab for study, presuming she just didn't die outright. So presuming that her conscious is somehow awakened aware.
I know what you're going to say. Go on.
What if she somehow spawned or sent the little guy and it was looking for a compatible host, but by Hikari's definition of a compatible host, someone compassionate, someone who was a protector, someone who was courageous, someone like Kafka.
Yeah.
And maybe she sent him deliberately to Kafka. Maybe it was just looking for a certain list of traits. But there have been a few moments that kind of make me think there might be this is more than just me having a pipe dream here. Number one is that interaction between Kafka and Kikoru when he was fully transformed. He was interacting with her in a very emotional way, in a very similar way to how her mother would interact with, was shown to interact with her.
Yep, I can't argue with that. Yep.
And then his reaction, far more tellingly, because Kafka is the kind of guy who's going to protect a girl like Kikoru. Far more tellingly was his reaction to General Shinamaya when he wakes up after having the snot beaten out of his body.
Yeah, after the beatdown.
Because that was a really emotional, visceral reaction to Iso's safety. And it even kind of stunned Iso. Now, we didn't question them in the moment because he is a shonen manga protagonist, but Matsumoto's history like of hiding major plot points behind common shonen tropes. And then there's just the overall look of Kaiju number 8. You have a white mask and a jet black body, which is an exact mirror of Hikari's uniform, and very similar to Iso's uniform. He has those he has the white gauntlets with the jet black uniform. But all the uniforms are kind of like that. And then you have, I noticed from the first that Kafka's fighting style was very, very similar to General Shinamaya's fighting style. And so maybe what the presumed Hikari Shinamiya, presumably trapped in Kaiju number 9's lab, somehow managed to send out this little guy to look. Perhaps she had actually aimed the little guy at Director General Shinamaya, but she was only able to impress upon him a certain mental concept of the qualities. She described Shinamaya. She described Iso to the little guy, but the little guy couldn't find Iso, but he spotted Kafka, who shares many of those traits, and said, "Okay, this is the guy she sent me to find." Okay, so that's my idea. Please comment.
Okay. Okay, well, your theories are wild. I love listening to them, honestly. So that theory is pretty damn sound. I actually like quite a lot about that. There's parts that I think might be like a bit of a stretch, but for the majority, the core of what you said, I could actually really get behind. What excites me kind of about that is when you're talking about the little kaiju bug, I'm also now kind of thinking like, okay, if Hikari sort of is somewhere or somewhere or something else in some degree, way, shape or form, I mean, based off of what you said about how, she was looking for someone that shared those qualities, but could also be someone that could then sort of protect, maybe even Kikoru and Isao, because they definitely have a stronger connection there. There's also, based off of the theory you just said, I was also just thinking that maybe like the little kaiju bug could even be potentially made from her as she was at the end, because it would also explain some other things, like when Kafka loses control to the kaiju bug, the major thing that comes out before that happens is that it says, "Oh, kaiju kill," and it kind of switches onto kaiju kill mode. And now that I'm thinking about it from a Hikari standpoint, it could be like those instincts kicking in because she was used to, exterminating kaiju. That's kind of like her switching back on within that consciousness. And then obviously, like you said, there are a lot of points with, the relationship between Kafka and Kikoru is definitely, there's more to it. It definitely, there's more emotion there. So I can definitely agree with that as well. The other little things about what you said, such as things like the fighting style, I'm not too sure that could just be coincidence, but the core of what you said, it is very exciting. I could definitely get behind it. Obviously, it's just a theory, but I like it a lot. Well done.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things, it doesn't even require Hikari to strictly speaking, be alive. It just requires her consciousness to have imprinted on something that would carry her impressions and goals.
Right, and I think that's what I like more than the idea of her being alive. More that, something else came out of her death or what happened to her. because that would be a very interesting plot twist.
Yeah. And there's also, just speaking artistically, there is a common trope in manga of the sleeping queen or the slumbering queen. It shows up in a lot of both shonen and shoujo manga. There is a queenly presence, either human or yokai, who was either corrupted or killed and is trapped somewhere far away. And this figure often shows up later in the series. And they don't, the main characters don't even know about it at first. I can think of at least 3 or 4 manga that have that trope central to them. The sleeping queen who either needs to be awoken or who is a source of power.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
yeah, we could
that is a
be seeing
motif that shows
Hikari.
up. Thanks for coming on. I have so much fun.
Oh yeah, me too. I do every time. Thank you for having me.
All right. Plug your plugs.
Oh, okay, well, thank you if you've still been listening this far. I'm Grimsabr, but you can call me Grim. I have my own YouTube channel where I talk about anime and manga all the time. Lots to do with Kaiju number 8. So if you are a fan of this series, feel free to hop on over and check out my videos. I do a lot of chapter reviews. So yeah, other than that, thanks for joining us.
All right. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Humans are weird. We took a vote, and humans are weird. I have the data. 2 books in a series of human absurdity. Go check out these short story collections. What will our little green friends think of us when we finally do make it to space? Find out the answer in 2 books of human absurdity. Humans are weird, we took a vote, and humans are weird, I have the data. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play.